Loving that intro music from our producer, Dargan Southard. I think we can call him that. And also loving that it's high school football season once again. Hey, what's up? Hello, everybody. My name is Cody Goodwin, a sports writer for the Des Moines Register, part of the Iowa USA Today network. And what we've got here today is a collection of all of the high school sports writers here around the Iowa USA Today network. That includes the Register, that includes the Iowa City Press Citizen, that includes the Ames Tribune and the Burlington Hawkeye. And what we've got today, a podcast to kind of preview the 2022 high school football season. So I figured we could start the show with just kind of going around. There's 5 of us here total. I've already introduced myself, Cody. We also have here Alyssa Hertel, who is on the show.
Hi, yeah, I'm Alyssa with the Des Moines Register. I cover recruiting and high school sports.
In addition to Alyssa, we also have Raven Moore, one of the many new faces and new hires that we've added to the team in recent weeks. Raven, welcome.
Happy to be here. Yes, my name is Raven Moore. I'm a new hire for the Iowa City Press Citizen. I'll be covering high school sports here as well as some Hawkeyes football.
There we go. That's Raven. Another name, Joe Randleman, who's been around Story County for quite some time, now with us as part of the Ames Tribune. Joe?
Yep, Joe Randleman from the Ames Tribune. I've been around since 2000, got 7 schools here covering pretty much all the high school sports here. So,
righteous. That's Joe. And finally, Matt Levins from the Burlington Hawkeye, maybe the most seasoned among us. Matt, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, Matt Levins, Burlington Hawkeye. I've been here for 32 years. I cover auto racing statewide and cover a little bit of everything, especially high schools.
Righteous. So that is the crew that we've got for today's show. We'll be kind of chiming in and out throughout the show to get you ready for the next half hour for the Iowa high school football season. Got a lot of different perspectives, different areas that we're going to touch on here. Of course, our coverage is statewide throughout the season. But what I thought we'd do today, guys, we have a story that should be live on DesMoinesRegister.com right now. I think you can find it at any of the USA Today Gannett sites. We did a story, kind of a team-wide effort here, 22 predictions for the 2022 high school football season. So what I thought we'd do for the first part of today's show is I went and pulled a prediction from each of you guys from that file. And I kind of wanted to maybe just discuss that prediction a little bit in depth. I tried to cast a wide net here of, teams in central Iowa and eastern Iowa, and just kind of, hey, like, what are we thinking? Why did we make that prediction heading into the 2022 season? So I think I'd start with Alyssa, our recruiting guru. One of your predictions was that Valley's Bryce Anderson could potentially be in for a breakout season. This is a guy that seems to have all the measurables, but as you noted in your prediction in the story, just 2 catches for 19 yards last season. So I'm curious, what's got you thinking that Anderson is poised for a breakout year this year?
Yeah, I think it's kind of big to say that someone that only had 2 receptions last year is going to be the big deal on the team this year, especially with Aiden Price returning. But I think when you have a guy that was able to, sit on the bench and learn from a guy like Eli Raridan, it's going to be hard to hold him back with Raridan graduated and at Notre Dame. For me, just looking at his film, just looking at how he produced it in camps and that sort of thing over the summer, I think he's done a lot of growth, outside of Valley. And I'm kind of curious to see how that translates to Valley's system. But just what I've kind of seen from his film, from him in person, I really think he's going to be a big contender and a kid that, like you said, the measurables are there, but gets that talent on the field.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing we know about Gary Swenson's offenses at Valley, it's that they can be creative. They tend to get the stars involved more often than not, which really makes me curious because this is an offense that there's not a lot of like superstar potential returning. You've got Aiden Price back. He's kind of a do-everything weapon for them offensively. And, defense, they have like a nice spine when you look at, the D-line, the linebackers and the secondary. And of course, we're talking about West Des Moines Valley, that they're going to have dudes all over the field. I'm kind of curious, just based on what you've heard from like recruiting folks and, just talking to coaches about this kid, like what's his ceiling? Like if Swenson's able to kind of unlock everything, how good can this guy be?
I will say I don't think he's Eli Raritan level. I think, that was a level of tight end that only comes around every few years or so. And to have it at the same school in back-to-back years would be quite the surprise. I think he's got a lot of low-level D1 potential. I think he also has the potential to be successful as a walk-on.
Absolutely. Lots of fun potential there for West Des Moines Valley. That was Alyssa. We're going to circle over to Raven now, who's in the Iowa City area. And your prediction that I pulled was about Iowa City Regina. This is a small school powerhouse. At one point they won 6 consecutive state championships. They were they got back into the state championship circle just a few years ago. Was bumped off in the playoffs. I believe it was in the second round to MFL Marmac last year. Now they're up in Class 1A. You picked them to get back to the Unidome. And I found this interesting because Class 1A seems to be super deep. Like there's a lot of really, really good teams in Class 1A. And so I'm kind of curious what ultimately led you to think, or I guess at least go with this prediction that Regina could get back to the Dome this year.
Yeah, I know it's going to be a challenge, especially as you mentioned being in 1A. But one thing that I think that no one can dispute is Regina has championship pedigree. Coming off of a state championship win just a couple years ago, they're itching to get back. I know that people had so many questions about how they were going to develop last year after the departure of their longtime head coach Marv Cook, but Jason Dumont came in, took charge, and helped get this team back to an undefeated regular season. Now, as you mentioned, they did lose in the second round of the playoffs, but in everyone I've talked to, from coaches to players, they have such a chip on their shoulder to get back to the standard of Regal's play that everyone's used to. And I think that that's going to take them pretty far this year.
Absolutely. I like that you mentioned the championship pedigree because that's kind of a team that it was, and I'm sure some of us who have been here for a while can, we can all agree to that. It seemed, Death Taxes and Iowa City Regina doing really, really well with small class football. Super excited to kind of see what they do. When they were able to get back into, they won a state championship. I believe it was 2020. That was down in Class A. They got up to 1A now. I'm super curious to kind of see how they do, just given the state of Class 1A. Lots of really good teams like Van Meter, West Sioux. I know Underwood has a talented quarterback that's back this year. There always seems to be a ton of really good teams in Class 1A. And I think not far from Iowa City, Regina, in your same area, Raven, West Branch. That's another team that always seems to be kind of in that mix. Can they make a postseason run? That's a team that's always a really tough out. I'm kind of curious as well. Regarding Iowa City, Regina, who are some of those players that you think could maybe lead them to another strong regular season and perhaps, as you're predicting, a pretty strong postseason push here?
Yeah, so one guy who's been getting a lot of acclaim is Gentry Dumont. He was the quarterback last year, started the first few games, unfortunately suffered a broken collarbone in the third game of the season. Now coming back for his junior year, he's expected to kind of explode a bit. He has a lot of familiarity with this offense. They're bringing back their leading rusher, Levi Daniel, who was tremendous, probably their best offensive player, kind of a gadget player, and Jack Tierney, who kind of stepped up in that quarterback role last year. But from what I'm told from Coach Dumont, he's going to be playing wide receiver. Defensively, they both, everyone admitted that they have some questions within the trenches, but they're bringing back a lot of strong pieces in their secondary and linebacker class, including Ronan Ponson. So I'm really excited to see how all the pieces come together. Like I mentioned, they're going to be showing some new faces in the trenches, and you have questions about Gentry Dumont and how he's going to develop after suffering such a serious injury, but everyone else seems incredibly confident, especially the team's leader. So I'm inclined to trust them.
I like that. Weapons all over the field tends to be a winning formula when it comes to small class football. And believe they have a pretty tough test right out of the gate against Williamsburg. That's a team I'm really high on when it comes to 2A, and loving to see the cross classification battles there early in the season. That'll be a fun one to watch right away.
Not to interrupt you, but yeah, they actually they gave them their toughest regular season bout last year. They were their season opener last year, 16-14 games. So I'm expecting much of the same this time around.
I love it. That's awesome. Thank you, Raven, for that. We're going to shift over to Joe now. Lots of Story County coverage of the last few years from you, Joe. But the prediction that I thought was super interesting from you is that you believe Ames will make the playoffs in Class 5A. This is a team that kind of went through, starts and stops last year, ended up 4-5. Class 5A, as we know, the entire postseason field is dictated by the RPI system that the Iowa High School Athletic Association implemented a few years ago. What has you thinking that these little Cyclones can get it done this year?
because they were close, really close last year. I mean, 38-36 loss to Lincoln pretty much sealed it. They still had a chance after against Johnston, just didn't have a good game that night. But when you bring back the leading passer in 5A regular season, Dallas Saucer, you have an elite receiving target, I think, in Jalen Luth. And then, Jamison Poe, sophomore running back, ran 700 yards as a freshman. And he's put on 20 pounds, I think Coach Saucer said so. And he's just the whole program in terms of this is his first off season. He's had full off season, had working with them. He's just really seems really happy with the growth they've had in terms of strength, getting bigger, stronger. And so I think that will help them. So.
Absolutely. You mentioned Coach Saucer, second year now at Ames. Before that, he was at Grinnell, where he had a lot of really good teams down there. They put up a lot of points for, that kind of class 2A, 3A range back before they expanded to 5A. But it's funny that you kind of mentioned that, because that was going to be my next question for you. Now that, they've had a whole off season together, Coach Saucer and the Ames program, now that they've really kind of had a whole year plus to really implement his system, like how much more do you think that familiarity is going to help? Just when it comes to, this Ames offense being able to really hit the ground running this season. Yeah.
And that's what we're going to see. Because that's an issue they had since before he came here, was just getting guys big enough, strong enough, and enough of them, because defense was a problem, offensive line. But they showed positive signs last year. And I think with the full year, they could take another step. Now, will they be elite on defense or on the offensive line? Probably not, but I think, it'll be enough to get them to where, like I said, Dallas led the state in passing last year, and you have a 700-yard rusher returning who could easily go over 1,000, I think, this year. The key will be just proving that they can push people on both fronts, which is like for all football, it's the trenches on both sides. And, they also need to find a few more offensive weapons besides Jalen and Jamison, but I think they can do that. So.
Absolutely. Tough schedule coming up for them, featuring teams like Fort Dodge, City High, Dowling Catholic, Lincoln, and Johnston. Pretty much the same schedule they played last year.
Yeah, and he broke it down in the thirds where, the first third, just kind of feeling yourself out. Iowa City High is going to be tough. I don't, that's probably not likely for them, but, you get through that one like 2-1, then you win those next three, and then the final stretch. Dowling, that's probably not going to happen, but, Lincoln and Johnston, if they split those two at least, I think they'll be in good shape for that. So.
Absolutely. Ames Little Cyclones going to be an interesting team to watch in Class 5A this season. Joe, thank you so much. Moving over to Matt now for the last of our prediction discussion. And Matt, this is an interesting one, because it always seems like there's a player every year in the 8-player class that kind of breaks out and becomes like a statistical superstar. I think that's the one, or I think that's the phrase that I normally use every year. And you picked Cam Buffington from Winfield Mount Union, who was a guy that I think last year we saw him really, start fast during the season. What was his sophomore year? And then he maybe tapered off a little bit, tougher competition as the schedule ramped up a little bit. And still a fantastic season last year, right? 36 total touchdowns, over 2,000 yards of total offense. But you believe he could be the statewide star this year. Why do you think that is?
I'm talking to Cam for the preseason preview. He's put on 20 pounds of solid muscle, so he's up to 6'3", 220 now. He's got a really good, solid crew around him, including the Clay Edwards' sons, Abram and Jake, two really good athletes. I just think Cam's ready for a breakthrough season, and I think he's going to have it.
Absolutely. He started fast already. I know Winfield Mount Union had a week 0 game, part of an 8-player showcase that was kind of over here, closer to Des Moines. Got a solid win. I think he scored, 5 touchdowns, maybe 6 touchdowns right out of the gate. 7 touchdowns. Casey, I was even underselling him there.
5 rushing, he returned an interception for a TD and a kickoff for a TD. So he's off to a great start.
That's awesome. That is awesome to hear so far. This is a big guy, and we've seen over the years, these stat superstars. I think last year was, Lane Speaker from Cam Anita ultimately led Cam to the 8-player state championship game. I mean, are those numbers he scored, I think, somewhere in the 60s or 70s when it came to total touchdowns scored last year. But, what kind of numbers are you thinking Cam can put up this year? I mean, when you're talking about a guy that's 6'3", 220 on an 8-player team, he's going to be the biggest guy every time he steps on the field. Like how productive do you think he could be this season?
I think he'll put up better numbers than he did last year even. He's got a better supporting cast this year. Winfield's been slowly building. They got a really good group of young kids coming in this year, and I think he's going to put up big numbers. And I think Iowa's going to get a great recruit here.
Absolutely. Hawkeyes tend to go after those do-everything 8-player guys, and crazy to think that he's only a junior this year, right? We get 2 more seasons of this guy, get to watch him tear up 8-player ranks, and he's definitely going to be a guy worth following this season. Yep. Going to be really interesting to see how him and Winfield Mountain Union does, because 8-player, always super entertaining ball. If you guys haven't watched an 8-player game, I suggest you get out there. It's a lot of fun to watch.
For sure.
Those were kind of the predictions that I wanted to touch on with you guys. I think our trusty producer, Dargan, I don't know if this show is going to have show notes, but if it does, I think Dargan will be able to slip that link in there so you guys can go click it and read the rest of the predictions that we had for the 2022 season. For the second half of the show, I kind of wanted to go around the circle one more time. And, I wanted to try and touch on, teams and players to watch in our respective areas that we cover. We got a nice range of covering the entire state here. And we'll be doing that all season long. But, to kind of round out the preview show, just another team and another player to watch from everybody. So we'll circle back around to Alyssa, who's along with me in the Des Moines area. Alyssa, we started talking about Valley's Bryce Anderson. I'm kind of curious, what's another team and another player that you're definitely going to be keeping 2 eyes on throughout the season from the Des Moines area?
Yeah, so player first for me, I'm going to go pretty basic with a quarterback. I'm going to go Connor Moberly at Southeast Polk. I think seeing what Jackson Daly and the rest of that team was able to put together the past few seasons is phenomenal, and I want to see how that torch is passed on to this kid he'll be a junior this year. He played JV for them last year, had over 2,000 yards, had 27 touchdowns, had like a 75% completion rate. And, JV is obviously completely different than varsity, but I think with his size, he's 6'4", so he's bigger than Daly was. With his size and the weapons that he has on this team already, I think he could be a really big difference maker for Southeast Polk this season. And kind of getting out to their practices the first week of practice, like he fits with this team. I mean, the offense is revolved around him now, and the weapons that they have on this team, he seems to connect with them really well. So I'm excited to see how he plays, taking on the starting role after just being on JV last year, but also how he's, preparing to go up against guys like Ankeny's JJ Cole, because that's the caliber you want to be at as a quarterback in the state right now. So that's my player to watch. And then from the recruiting side of things, I have to say that Lewis Central is the team to watch this year. I mean, you have Braylon Cameron as a stud quarterback. You have Jonathan Humple, who, in my opinion, is just so freaking tricky. And I think he's getting really overlooked right now in terms of recruiting. So I'm excited to see what, his senior season holds for him. And then you have an offensive and defensive tackle like Garrett Rutledge, who I think has a really, really high ceiling. And this could be the year for him to kind of start collecting some offers. So Lewis Central definitely has to be my team to watch.
I love those picks. Always curious to kind of see who plays quarterback for Southeast Polk. And especially with what Jackson Daly did last year, it'd be kind of interesting to see how much is similar, but also how much different Moberly might be this year. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely excited. That'll be the game that I'm at this Friday, Dowling Catholic versus Southeast Polk. So be kind of interesting to get eyes on him week 1 right out of the gate, especially against, a Dowling defense that's normally ferocious. Always appreciate a Lewis Central pick when it comes to high school football coverage. That's a team that, they seem to have all the weapons back offensively, minus, I think it was Braden Lofton, who was their tight end last year, a big bodied receiver. And then obviously they're losing Hunter Deo, but it just seems like that's a program that reloads again. So I picked them as the early season favorite in Class 4A. So be kind of curious to see if they're able to maintain that all the way through the season. I like those picks. Righteous. We're going to circle back to Raven. is in the Iowa City area, where there is absolutely zero lack of talent. There's just tons of really good players and teams to choose from in that Johnson County area. Raven, give me a player and a team that you plan on keeping two eyes on this season.
Yeah, so I'm going to take things to Kinnick Stadium. We all know City High is going to be hosting Liberty there on Friday. It's going to be an awesome event. And while everybody is kind of assuming that City High is going to run away with it, I'm excited to see what Liberty is going to do, more specifically linebacker and tight end Christian Barney. Voted the team's MVP a season ago. He's the team's leading returner in tackles for loss, as well as in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. I just think that with a guy like Christian Barney, I think he gets overlooked a lot just because, let's be honest, Liberty was not great last year, went 3-6, started the year off 0-5. Just not the year that you want to have for such a young program. But Christian Barney was definitely a guy who was all over the field, who has high expectations for not only himself but this team, and I think that he's going to be somebody who really stands out in his senior campaign. And as far as a team, this might feel like cheating because they went to state last year, but I love the Solon Spartans. I think that they are going to be another really competitive team. I know I mentioned in my predictions that I thought the Regals will make it back, but I don't think it's as much of a bold prediction to say that Solon will make it back. They're going to be bringing back 3 of 4 players from a year ago who are all state caliber guys. They're bringing back so many key pieces, especially at quarterback. With Blake Timmons coming back, running back Sean Stahl, their best linebacker, and arguably best defensive player, Brett White. There's just so much to love about this Lucas Stanton-led team, and I think that Solon is going to be a team that's really going to blow teams out the water.
I like that pick because I feel like Solon is a team that, when it comes to postseason time, they're always there. We always see them. We always talk about them. We always write about them. But, I don't know if they just don't get a lot of preseason love from us, or if maybe we just kind of take that success for granted. So I really like that you picked that team as a team worth watching. And, of all the teams that are all the players, I guess, that are, loaded at City High, it seems like West High is on their way back up after, maybe a few down years, quote unquote. I like that you picked a Liberty player to watch. That'll be a lot of fun. That's a school that still very brand new, but very clearly the athletic programs are coming along there too. So I like those picks. It's going to be a really fun football season and really fun school year, I think, in Iowa City this year. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch those teams. We'll circle back to Joe now, back in the Story County area. Joe, we talked about the Ames Little Cyclones, but give me another team and another player that you plan on watching closely this season.
Well, for a player, I'm going to be watching Eli Rouse at Ballard. He's their quarterback / running back, depending on where they want to put him. He started this season week 0 against Winterset at quarterback. But he's a guy who I remember when they played Nevada last year, game I was at, Ballard went for it on their own 5-yard line on 4th down, and he went 95 yards for a touchdown. And, then after that, he goes for over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns in a big comeback win against North Polk. And I think he had something like 860 yards rushing in just basically half a year. And, as a sophomore, and now he's back, and just going to be interested to see what they can do and how they use him, because they really don't have a quarterback right now. So he's kind of taking that role, but, he's a special talent. So
I like that. That's good pick there from Ballard. What's another team in the Story County area that you're going to be paying close attention to?
I'm looking at Nevada again, because this is a team who since I've been here, they'd struggled for years. Just couldn't get anything going for football. Had an 2009 season or 2 in there, and made a playoffs a couple of years under John Pelzer in 2A. But now Andrew Kleeman really has built that program up. And, they made the 9-2 last year, losing to Harlan in the quarterfinals after going 6-3 the year before, 7-2 the year before that. And they just seem like they're building something. And, their defense, like I said, with the trenches, defense, offensive line, they've got it down. And, they got some good running backs in there, and doesn't seem who they have at quarterback. Doesn't matter who they have at quarterback, because I think it's like 4 different quarterbacks the last 4 years. And, that's a sign of a strong program that can just keep the wheels churning when you keep replacing the most important positions. So.
Absolutely. Love the small school picks there from Joe in the Story County area. Going to be fun to follow those guys, especially Nevada. That's a team that I think could really make some noise in the 3A ranks. And Ballard already opened up with what I thought was a pretty strong week 0 win over Winterset. I think that score was 26-7. So they looking strong, really strong out of the gate. So it'll be fun to see if they can continue that momentum heading into week 1. That is Joe from the Ames Tribune. We're going to wrap up again, circling back to Matt. Talked about Cam Buffington at length from Winfield Mountain Union. What's another team and another player that you plan on watching closely this fall, Matt?
I think the best team down in this corner of the state is going to be Mediapolis in 1A. They are loaded. They got all their skill people back. Anthony Isley, their running back, is finally healthy. He's committed to UNI. Cole Lippert, their tight end, has put on 25 pounds of muscle in the offseason. He's being recruited by Western Illinois at this point. And their coach, Brian Borison, is a young guy, real enthusiastic, and the kids just love him. I mean, they would literally run through a brick wall for this guy. I mean, the kids up there just love him. And there's just a lot of excitement around that program right now. The player I'm going to pick to watch is kind of a strange one. I mean, most people don't look at the special teams, but Drew Miller from Mediapolis is something really special. He led the nation in punting average last year, 44.4 yards per kick. This year, he's getting 70 yards hang time in the air for his punts, and he's kicking him in practice field goals from 60 yards. So this guy is special. Iowa State's recruiting him, and he's going to be fun to watch.
I believe, too, Drew Miller, the number 1 ranked punter according to Cole's Kicking. Is that right?
Correct. And
Number
he goes
1
to
ranked.
a lot of kicking camps.
Well, there you go. Yeah, number 1 ranked in the country. Wouldn't be an Iowa football podcast, high school or otherwise, if we did not mention special teams. I like those picks, Matt. I like those picks from everybody. This was a really fun show. Think we're going to try and do this somewhat regularly throughout the season. We'll kind of I guess we'll broadcast this out on socials whenever we figure out what kind of normal schedule we might be on. But this was a lot of fun talking predictions and talking players and teams to watch for the 2022 high school football season. For Alyssa, Raven, Joe, and Matt, I'm Cody Goodwin. Appreciate you guys watching and listening. We'll talk to you again soon.